Three, two, one. Welcome everyone to episode 1 of Dumb Dumb Film School. I am your host, Danny Till. Let's get down to brass tacks. Oh, cut that out. Take 2. Ready. 3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to Dumb Dumb Film School. I am your host, Danny Till. Let's get down to brass tacks. Why am I here talking to you guys? Why are you listening? Here's the thing. I'm not a very smart guy. Anybody who knows me can attest to this. I'm quite a dum-dum. I'm not that smart. I'm kind of stupid. But I know a lot about movies. I watch a lot of movies. I watch a ridiculous amount. I mean, if you look at my Letterboxd account, let me scroll this up here. I am listed at number, how many for this year? I am listed at 313 films for this year. We are on October 3rd of the day that we are recording this. And no, I am not watching Mean Girls today. I was going to, but I did not want to go to the theaters alone. And I checked the seating chart for the theater. Nobody had bought tickets. I did not want to go see Mean Girls on Mean Girls Day alone in an empty theater because here's why. You know the line where Lindsay Lohan says it's October 3rd? That is a crowd applauding moment. What is the point of going to see that in a theater on this day when you know you're not going to get a full crowd applause in that moment? Like, there's no point, you know? And also, luckily for me, I got it on Blu-ray in the nice pink Blu-ray case. So you may be wondering, what is the objective to this podcast? Well, I am here to talk to you guys about a random movie each episode. And here's the thing, I was inspired because I always thought to myself, you know what? I tried a podcast in 2020. It wasn't that great. I got some decent feedback on it, but, you know, it wasn't that great. And I tried again, and that wasn't good either. So I thought to myself, what do I know? I know movies. I got a lot of them. And I was commenting to this on the Breakfast All Day podcast not years ago, but a few months ago. I was saying, hey, you know what? I could technically start a film criticism-esque podcast on my own. I got a lot of movies. I could watch one a week or something like that, you know? And recently, Quentin Tarantino's podcast got launched where it's him and his creative partner from the 90s, Roger Avery. He and Roger worked together at Video Archives, video store for quite a long time. I think Quentin worked there for 5 years. I think Roger worked there for over or just at about 10 years. And what they're doing is they're taking, I think it's 3 movies for every episode, and they discuss them. Well, here's the thing. Because I got so many movies, I can literally do an episode about a different one. And here's the good thing. I got a good amount of Blu-rays and DVDs. So one episode will be a Blu-ray, one episode will be a DVD. This first episode, obviously, in case you just did not listen, it is a Blu-ray episode. And I was struggling. What do I start episode 1 off with? And I figured, let's go back to childhood. Let's go and just watch something and talk about something that probably meant a deep, deep amount to me at some point in my childhood. And guess what? There was one. It is a sports film from 1999 starring a great young cast of, at the time, up-and-coming actors who then blew up. I am talking about the 1999 high school football film Varsity Blues. Now, anybody who's listening to this podcast probably has seen it, and if not, this is a great time for me to be talking to you about this. Because I loved this movie as a kid. For so long I wanted to see it. I think it was just because I was enticed by the video cover. And again, it's a standard cover, at least the original DVD and the VHS cover is, where it's just a bunch of the cast sitting in a truck. And then you look on the back, it's football. And generally, while I don't really give a shit about sports, football and any sport film entices me. It entices the non-sports watcher. Sports movies cliches work. Now, sometimes a sports movie will suck donkey dick, and others, it knocks it out of the park. Varsity Blues, I think, knocks it out of the park, and it does so in a delightful fashion. And so, This cast is really famous now. A good chunk of them are. So in the cast, you got James Vanderbeek in the lead, who at the time was hot on Dawson's Creek. When this movie came out, he was 21 years old. And you have John Voight as the coach, Bud Kilmer. You have Scott Kahn as the rebellious Charlie Tweeter. You got the late, great Paul Walker as the quarterback, Lance Harbor. You have the delightful Amy Smart as James Vanderbeek's girlfriend, who also plays Paul Walker's character's sister. You got Allie Larder as Paul Walker's character's girlfriend. You have, who else? You have the great Ron Lester, rest in peace, as Billy Bob. And you have this very eclectic young cast. And it just hits. This movie opened in January 1999, was number one at the box office, held on strong enough to be number one again in the second weekend. And it was directed by a guy named Brian Robbins, and you may be wondering, who is that? Because his career is very fascinating, because he started off as an actor. He was in the 80s sitcom Head of the Class. He then moved over to the behind the camera-esque of the entertainment business. He is one of the co-creators and producers of the sketch comedy show All That. And then he started directing features. His first one was Good Burger. And, if you're doing a first feature as a director, why not, make a movie out of a sketch on a show that you created, so you kind of are versed enough in the world, right? Well, Varsity Blues was his second film. He then, after that, did the wrestling movie Ready to Rumble, which didn't do great at the box office, but has a cult following. He did, I'm trying to think of other ones that he did. I know what he did starting in 2006, because I know in 2006 he directed The Shaggy Dog. And he also did this Eddie Murphy movie called Meet Dave, which was a giant bomb. For whatever reason, I was entitled to see that, and I rented it from a kiosk in 2007. Or 2008, rather. Was it 2000? Oh, wait, no, yeah, it was 2008. Sorry, I couldn't think of when the time was. I'm looking this up now on his Wikipedia page. And also he also directed the movie Norbit, which is another one I'll probably discuss because I have it on DVD. And that was a critical flop. Nobody critically panned, but financially did okay. He directed the Eddie Murphy film 1,000 Words, which I don't know how many people actually have seen 1,000 Words. Have any of you guys out there seen 1,000 Words? It was one of those films where apparently it was shot in, I think, 2007, 2008. And it was kind of just put on hold because I think it was because DreamWorks at the time, I think maybe was in this weird studio merger limbo. I forget the ins and outs of it. But anyway, it was shot in 2007 or 2008, then released finally in 2012. He also directed the sports film Hardball, which was with Keanu Reeves, Diane Lane. I have that other one, and it's a decent baseball movie. It's decent, and I understand why people love it. And the G Baby death in that movie is, you know what? Fuck it. People are gonna be like, Danny, spoiler alert. It's Hardball. It's been out for 21 years. If you had not seen it, that's on you. Spoiler alert. G Baby dies. That's right. G Baby. And then he also directed this movie from 2004. I completely forgot about this. This will be probably another episode. He also directed this movie called The Perfect Score. I don't know if anybody out there knows this one. It's with Erica Christensen, who people may know in television-wise from Parenthood. She was in Traffic. She was in some other stuff. You have Chris Evans. And this is his first of many collaborations with the great Scarlett Johansson. And that was a film where if you remember, it's about six teenagers who want to get good SAT scores, and they figured let's break into the facility where they have the SAT test itself and steal the answers. But then, producing wise, he did a decent amount. But where Brian really stride was from a corporate standpoint, because he, I believe, was the president and founder of Awesomeness TV, and then he went on to become the president of Paramount Players, which is a division of Paramount that does genre films and stuff aimed towards younger crowds. And then he went on to become the president of Nickelodeon, and now I think he now is the president of Paramount Pictures, which is kind of crazy because Paramount Pictures released Varsity Blues. Anyway, back to Varsity Blues itself. Simple plot is small Texas high school football team is because Texas football, I cannot imagine what it's like, especially high school football. High school football in Texas is this giant deal. But anyway, this high school football team is very successful. They treat the football players like gods wherever they go. And they are on their way to winning their, I believe, 23rd district championship. Bud Kilmer is this well-respected coach, even though he's kind of a prick. But guess what? They don't care because Bud Kilmer has got 2 state titles since the beginning of the movie. He has 2 state titles and 22 district championships. How can you not love that? How can you not love your high school football team winning a bunch of times? How can you not love that? But the coach kind of does whatever is necessary to get the victories, and that means having his players on painkillers and taking shots in the knee whenever their knees are in pain so they can ease the pain and play the game. He's doing whatever it costs, including his players' lives, to win. When Paul Walker gets injured in a game, James Vanderbeek, who is the second string quarterback who always sits on the bench, he has to step up and get into the game. So now not only does he have all this new pressure put on him, because at the movie, when it starts, you have 5 games left. So this movie takes place over basically 5 weeks. You have 5 games left of the season, and then you're out, because he is trying to get out of his, I believe it's a fictional town called West Canaan. He's trying to get out and get into Brown University, and he wants to get out because even though, yes, he technically is a football player, he is trying to get out and do something with himself, Like he's trying to get a academic scholarship, not an athletic scholarship. Anyway. So when he steps up, he has to deal with the whole town's pressure, his coach's pressure, but also his pressure from his particularly father, because his father played under Kilmer when he was in high school. And it's kind of funny how his father idolizes Bud Kilmer as a coach, but his Kilmer puts down his James Vanderbeek's character's father constantly. He never says it to him, obviously, but he says it when he's not around or whatever. And anyway, this movie comes out in 1999, January 1999. Does pretty well. Let me look at the box office stats here. It is, let's see, where is it? Here we go. Yeah, you grossed $54.3 million on a $16 million budget. And this was a co-production between Brian Robbins and Mike Tolan's production company, and also MTV Productions. And I remember watching the behind-the-scenes documentary on the Blu-ray. And Brian Robbins was trying to pitch this movie to Paramount, because it's a rated R sports comedy, which obviously has some raunchiness to it, but also it has a lot of heart. So when he was pitching the movie to Paramount, he said, guys, like, I want to make this movie less Porky's and more Hoosiers. And he was initially worried about that, worried that the studio wouldn't agree with him. And the studio's like, no, well, yeah, let's go make that. And I think they succeeded. Now, when this movie came out, critically, it was kind of mixed. I believe Ebert gave it 2 stars out of 4. Critically, it's at 43%. And I'm looking at a quote from Ebert's review where it says, "Scenes work, but they don't pile up and build momentum." I think they do. And what's funny is 2 years later, movie was parodied in the film Not Another Teen Movie. Ron Lester basically reprises his character of Billy Bob, but now his character is called Reggie Ray. And another aspect to Ali Larter's character is then used on Chris Evans' character. And it's a very funny scene. But yeah, no, critically, though, this movie was mixed, but it was very beloved by its young adult audience. This movie was beloved by its young adult audience because, again, Dawson's Creek was So I never seen the show Dawson's Creek. I know that James Van Der Beek is on it, but like anybody who's listening to this, whether it's on YouTube, can you make a comment? Is this character actually named Dawson? I think it is. I could be wrong. But yeah, no, he was the lead of this movie. Dawson's Creek was, I think, in its second or third season, and and it's kind of just grown on. It's kept going, and this is a movie I watched it for the first time. I'd been wanting to see it for quite a couple of years, and finally, I think it came on TBS, and I started watching it. I would say 25 minutes into it, because of the scene I came across it on TV. It was when they're in the backyard, they're at this cookout, and they're trying to see which son's a better quarterback between Paul Walker and James Van Der Beek's father. So they're throwing the football, and Paul Walker's obviously getting perfect throws, and they're doing this thing where it's like, knock the beer can off your father's head, and James Van Der Beek's character's like, come on, Dad, this is stupid, but his dad's like, no, toss the beer can off. And he knows that he can toss that beer can off, but instead he chucks that ball, and it hits his dad directly in the nose. Because his character, Mox, Jonathan Moxon, everybody calls him Mox, he doesn't want to be a part of any of that shit, you know? But, this movie does have some very solid dramatic moments. And my thing is just, if you haven't seen this movie, you really should watch it. It's quite good. But there's a scene where Ron Lester's character gets berated at by John Voight. And he is just at an all-time low mentally, and he is just so sad. He feels like he's fucked everything up, and it's to the point where he thinks maybe he should end his life. And it's a very hard scene, but I think it's very well acted for these two young actors. And it's got a great soundtrack. It's got AC/DC, it's got Green Day, it's got the Foo Fighters. It's got a great soundtrack, guys. It's got an amazing soundtrack. Time-wise, we are at 18 minutes. Not too bad. Though, granted, I'm going to have to edit out, the first, 40 seconds, because it was a fuck-up. So, let's say 17 and a half minutes, let's call it even, okay? And so, after watching it initially on TBS, finally, I think it was my aunt, she had a VHS copy. She'd only watched it a handful of times. She thought, I'll just give you the VHS copy, and I wore that motherfucker out. I watched that VHS so many fucking times. It's to the point where, you know how the VHSs, they have the label on it? My VHS label fell off it. I don't know if that was just because it was not sticky enough to the tape, or just because I would watch it so much, or if it's just because it got... I don't know. I don't know why it fell off, because it did, and I had to scotch tape it. And yeah, so this is when I'm 10, so this means I'm in 5th grade, and I would watch this movie constantly. And I remember bringing a buddy of mine over. We had just gone to go see Kung Fu Panda, so this is, 14 years ago. Because that was 2008. And we just sat in the living room, and we just watched this movie. And we had a great time watching it, and it was just a great experience. And then, for whatever reason, I didn't watch it for a few years, and I think it was also just because I don't know. Like, I think it's just because I was out of that point in elementary school age where you would just watch certain things over and over and over and over again. And I watched it again a couple years later, I think. And then when I moved out and moved into my mom's condo in the Sacramento area, I went to my local Best Buy and there was advertising. This is back when Best Buy would advertise like their cheaper Blu-rays on like these little displays. So it would be like, what, 8 to 10 titles, and there'd be like $5 a piece. One of the ones I got was Varsity Blues. I got that, and I got the 2 disc director's cut of Zodiac, and and I think another one was Secret Life of Walter Mitty. So I think those were the three. And oh wait, no, I think another one was the 2014 RoboCop. I never watched it. I got rid of that thing. I mean, I'd seen it, but I was just like, I don't know why I need this. I'm never gonna watch it. And so I had not seen it in a long time, but I have it firmly in my memory, and I'm just literally just replaying the movie over and over again in my head. And certain times, when you watch a movie, but you don't watch the movie itself a bunch, but you go back and watch certain scenes over and over and over and over and over again. So there's a couple scenes in this movie where I do rewatch them over and over and over again. Like the one scene is the thunderstruck sequence, and to put this into setup, they spend all night partying at the strip club, and they are still hammered, and they just suck tonight, man. They just fucking suck. And they're like, all right, we gotta suck one up and put one on the end zone, and it's like a minute and a half, 2 minute sequence, and a thunderstruck is blasting, and they are just getting the shit kicked out of them because they suck so bad. And then there's the moment in the locker room, and again, I'm not gonna give it away if you haven't seen it, but it's this moment where James Vanderbeek has to deliver this speech, and then it results in like everybody just clapping their hands, and they're just like, yeah. And anyway, the movie and like in every sports movie cliche, they win the big game and victory is theirs, blah 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 blah, and then you hear what happened to all the players, and it's kind of interesting though. Like when you look back, like a lot of those actors were at the beginning of those careers. Like I said, James Vanderbeek, Scott Conn, Ron Lester I think had been in and out of things before. I thought for so long he was in the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You know how River Phoenix as young Indiana Jones, he has a chunkier friend? Apparently he was not. He was not that guy. But apparently Ron's first movie was in 1997 where he played Spatch in Good Burger. And if you remember Spatch, he was the guy that was quiet, and he eats a fly off of his head. And Ron had this very interesting life in his in the early early 2000s, I would say, because Ron was a very very large man. He was very big, and I guess he had been obese since he was a kid, and at his highest, he weighed like I think 508 pounds. So then in 2000, he underwent a gastric bypass surgery procedure called Roux-en-Y gastric bypass with a duodenal switch, and he lost 310. And then he had 18 plastic surgeries just to remove all that fucking excess skin, and I imagine he had a lot of it. But sadly, Ron passed away in 2016. He was in September 2015 though he was hospitalized due to issues with his liver and kidneys. And then in June of the following year, so this is 9 months later, he was reported to be in critical condition in hospice care. And then at 9:00 p.m. on June 17, 2016, he died of liver and kidney failure shortly after his family requested that he be taken off life support, and he was 45 years old. So, Ron didn't have a lot on his resume. Yeah, so he had a few movies, like he had Good Burger, Varsity Blues. He parodied his character in another teen movie. He did a couple other films that I had not seen before, and I didn't realize that he had. Oh wait, no, so it wasn't that one. I thought it was another movie. Sorry. And then he was in a couple of episodes of Freaks and Geeks. He was on this WB show called Popular. I never saw it. And he done a couple of guest spots, but his career, I guess, kind of went a different way. I guess when he had lost the weight, I don't know. And then, of course, we get to Paul Walker. Paul Walker, what a guy! He was Paul Walker was an idol. He still is. Like, you know how like everybody says, like, when they're like all these younger guys, they would say they were inspired by like James Dean or River Phoenix, like some of these just like iconic young actors. Paul Walker was that for me. Paul Walker was that for me. Because I was 4 years old when Fast and the Furious came out, and then I saw it, because again, I didn't see it in the theaters, but I remember seeing the trailer, I think, in the theaters. And it has Limp Bizkit's 1999 blasting, and you have all these action sequences where the cars are just going, you have all these motorcycle stunts, you got explosions, you got guns, you got everything. So it's I think one of the greatest trailers ever made. Obviously, there are other ones. There are other ones that are better, but it has a nostalgic place in my heart. But anyway, I saw that, and I was just like fascinated by that guy. And for Paul, Paul had been an actor since he was in his teen, since he was a kid. He started when he was like 11. I remember seeing him in a rerun in an old episode of Highway to Heaven, and it was a two-parter, and it has a young Josh Brolin in it. And yeah, so this was Paul's, I believe, fifth film, because right before this he had, in the same year, Meet the Deedles, which is a Disney version of Bill and Ted, basically. Then you got obviously Pleasantville, and then later on in 1999 you had She's All That. Then you had The Skulls. Then you had The Fast and the Furious, and then you had Joyride, which is a great B-movie thriller, which I think is severely underrated. And then his career just went in this crazy trajectory because of the Fast and the Furious franchise. And Scott Conn, obviously the late great James Caan's son, he has made a name for himself in his own way. He was in the last couple years of Entourage, but he is very well known in the reboot of Hawaii Five-O. Well, not reboot. I would say it's a remake. Or wait, is it a reboot or remake? According to Wikipedia, it's listed as a reboot. So sure, why not a reboot? And he was Dano on Hawaii Five-O. That's how my mom mainly knows him. I mean, he's been in other stuff, but like again, my mother watches the same fucking Hawaii Five-O reruns over and over and over again. And obviously Scott Conn also did the Oceans trilogy, and he did some other parts and stuff. And obviously John Voight is John Voight. He has this great acting career. He's going back to like the 60s or some shit like that. And then, and obviously, Voight has had, he's in the last few years, he's been known more, I think, for his political stance, which I don't give a shit about. I think he's a great actor. Even in movies where like even if he's in a movie where it's shit, he still gives it his all. And then obviously James Vanderbeek, like I said, Dawson's, and he's been in some other interesting stuff. Like he was in that show. Did anybody watch Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23? I never really saw it. But he played Diplo in that show. What would Diplo do? It was one of the first times that Viceland had narrative content. So it was on Hulu for forever. It was in my Hulu list for years. And then I think it was during 2020 when they were finally going to take it off Hulu. So I thought, okay, it's 5 episodes. I'll knock them out. Very odd, but decent show, I think. And then, let's see, time-wise, we are at around 29 minutes. And I feel like I've said pretty much all I really have to say about Varsity Blues and some of the cast. But and if somebody probably be wondering, where does it rank amongst your favorite sports movies? Listen, I admit it's not as good as Rocky. It's not. But if I had to say, if somebody had to say off the top of my head, like, what is probably your favorite movie of all time? I would say Varsity Blues possibly is that. And I think about, like, it's between that. I would say it's between that, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the first Home Alone, and I don't know what else. I think I base it just off of, like, what movies have I seen the most, or based off the movies I've seen the most or have meant the most to me at a certain point in my life. So yeah, it's like Home Alone was probably the first movie I remember watching over and over and over again. Then Ferris Bueller was another one where I watched over and over and over and over again. Excuse me. And I think Varsity Blues, in a way, kind of was like one of the last films that, like. And again, I still watch movies on repeat now, but like there was, like I said earlier, when there's a period when you're a kid, you become attached to a certain thing, and you just want to watch it over and over and over and over and over again. It's like, how like when you were a kid and you get like those, when you had those orange VHS tapes. And again, I'm speaking to the audience that is between, that is born pre like 2001 or 2002, where again, like, you had the orange VHS tapes and you would watch, like, what is it, like one or two episodes of Rugrats, and you just watch the same shit over and over and over again. Well, I was that way with a handful of these films. And Varsity Blues just has a special place in my heart, and I have the poster of it, but obviously it's not an original. It's an 11 by 17, but it's in a decent frame. I'll give it that. I bought the frame at Michael's, and I don't know what you guys have been. I don't know what your guys' experience buying stuff at Michael's was like. But for me, like, the poster frames look great, but like when I put the poster in it, it kind of like wrinkles the poster itself a little bit. But like I said, it looks nice on my wall. And like I said, I had the Blu-ray, so I thought, what a great first episode for this. And then next episode will be something for my DVD in my collection. And again, like, if I want to keep this podcast going, I can keep it going for probably 1,000 episodes, man. I can keep it going for so fucking long. It's crazy how long it is that I could keep doing this for. And also, I'm gonna eventually start having guests on, because me talking by myself alone in my, room on my desktop with my headphones on, speaking into the microphone, it can, get boring. You kind of like lose your voice after a while, because also I don't have water with me or anything like that. So I'm definitely gonna get better at this for sure. In case you can tell by my yawning, I'm recording this at night and I'm tired. But like I said, this will be the first episode of Dum Dum Film School. This will be just the introduction episode, and I'm hoping to get better and better at these episodes and have more guests on, because I want to eventually start bringing on and potentially Zooming and interviewing members of the production of some of these films. Like, I would love to talk to some of the writers of some of these films. Like when I get to like, if I ever get to Frey versus Jason, I would love to interview Damian Shannon and Mark Swift for half an hour. But if I ever get to Grandma's Boy, I would love to talk to Nick Goosen for a little bit. Like, and one of the big ones for me would be so obviously I'm going to talk about pretty much all of Kevin Smith movies, because I pretty much own all of Kevin's films. Minus, obviously, Kilroy Was Here, because that's an NFT. But I own pretty much all of his work, minus Cop Out, I would say. But I'm going to start talking about his films, because Kevin Smith is one of the biggest influences on my life, for sure. And what I mean by that is, while obviously for wanting to go into entertainment and being in movies and doing something with film, it was the moment when I first saw, E.T. flying in front of the moon, which is obviously the Amblin logo. That was a huge deal for me when I was a kid. Seeing that at 4, I thought I knew what I wanted to do with my life. But when I was in 8th grade and I started watching his movies like Clerks, it was these specific 3 or 4. because it was technically four, but it was the main three because after a while, one of them got taken off Netflix. So I'll tell you what they were. So this is 2011. The movies of Kevin's I would watch over and over and over again are Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. But it was especially Clerks, Chasing Amy, and Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back because Mallrats was on Stars. And when I was in 8th grade, so this is 2011, at the time, Netflix was a brand new streamer, and they had a partnership with Stars. So they would occasionally air. So they would release. They would do Stars films that were airing on that channel on the service, and you would have the Stars logo play before the film. And so like when I started watching these movies, I was just fascinated by them, and it made me to the point where I think I want to work behind the camera. I want to do what Kevin Smith does. And even though I had seen a little bit of Dogma before, when I was like 10, I would say, it was on Comedy Central. I own Dogma too, so I'll be covering that one. I also got it on Blu-ray, which is a super fucking hard thing to find. I was walking around in my local. In one of my local Dimple Records locations, rest in peace, it's now called The Cave. And I came across Dogma on Blu-ray, and I think it was for, $11. I could be wrong, but it was something around that price range. I thought, I gotta fucking get this, because Dogma on Blu-ray, if you don't know, it's one of the hardest things to find in pop culture. Like, it goes for crazy high. It goes up to $190 to maybe $180. Ridiculous prices. But after talking about a bunch of Kevin's films, when I talk about Clerks 3, because I'm gonna buy Clerks 3, I want to try to interview Kevin Smith, or at least to get him on and talk to him for maybe 25-30 minutes. And there's a couple of buddies of mine, Tyler Cantu and Stevie C, that I want to get on for that. So if I ever get to interview Kevin Smith, Tyler and Stevie are going to be my co-hosts and guest interviewers for that. I would love for them to join in on that conversation. And they would be able to say, hey, we got to talk to Kevin Smith for half an hour, you know? And so like I said, this is the first episode of Dum Dum Film School. I know this was kind of rusty. I'm just off the fly talking about this movie that was very beloved to me. And if you haven't seen it, I think you would have a blast with it. And if you're wondering where you can get it, let me go on Google it right now, because for a while it was on HBO Max. It's the point where HBO Max released released a scene from it and put it on their HBO Max YouTube channel. You can now watch it on Paramount Plus, which makes sense because it's a Paramount film. And I think it's worth your time. It's about an hour and 46 minutes, and it's a fun ride, and I think you guys will enjoy it. And this has been episode 1 of Dum Dum Film School. I am your host, Danny Till. Thank you very, very much. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, click that subscribe button. Leave your comments down below. Have you seen Varsity Blues? What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? And listen, and if you've never seen it before, I'm curious if this episode made you want to go watch it. And I'll be starting to put these episodes on YouTube, and then I got to look into how to get my podcast on Spotify. A lot of my friends put their podcasts on Spotify, so maybe I'll be able to get it done. But like I said, this has been episode 1 of Dum Dum Film School. I've been your host, Danny Till. Thank you very, very much, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you, and goodbye.